What if the most powerful food crops you could grow are the ones the system quietly ignores? Not because they're weak, but because they don't fit the rules. Modern agriculture is built around control, uniform crops, long shelf life, and easy transportation. But there's another category of plants that completely break those rules. They grow faster, survive harsher conditions, and often produce more nutrition than the crops you see in stores. These are the underground crops plants that don't rely on the system to thrive. And once you understand them, you stop depending on fragile food chains and start building something far more powerful right in your own space. Number 1. Purslane, the crop that refuses to follow the rules. Purslane is one of the clearest examples of a plant that exists completely outside the logic of modern agriculture. While most crops depend on controlled conditions, fertilizers, irrigation systems, and protection from the environment, purslane does the opposite. It thrives in neglect. It grows in poor soil, survives extreme heat, and continues spreading even when water is limited. In a system designed around control, a plant like this becomes inconvenient. But for a grower, that inconvenience becomes a massive advantage. The first thing that makes purslane powerful is its resilience. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It doesn't need carefully prepared soil. It appears, establishes itself, and begins producing almost immediately. This ability to grow without dependency turns it into something more than just a plant. It becomes a self-sustaining system. Once it takes root, it continues producing without requiring constant input, which dramatically reduces effort over time. Its growth pattern is equally important. Purslane spreads low and wide, forming dense mats that cover the ground quickly. This does two things at once. First, it produces a large amount of edible material in a relatively small space. Second, it blocks sunlight from reaching the soil, which naturally suppresses weeds. Instead of competing with unwanted plants, it replaces them entirely. This shifts the dynamic from maintenance to management, where the plant does most of the work for you. Nutritionally, purslane is far ahead of many conventional greens. It contains omega-3 fatty acids, which are extremely rare in leafy vegetables. This alone places it in a completely different category. But here's the key detail. Because it doesn't store well and isn't suited for long-distance transport, it doesn't fit into large-scale food systems. That's why it's almost invisible in supermarkets, despite its value. Another advantage is its speed. Purslane doesn't take months to produce usable growth. It establishes quickly and continues expanding, which means you can harvest repeatedly without waiting for long cycles. This creates a continuous flow of output rather than isolated harvest periods. Compared to traditional crops, purslane represents a different model entirely. It removes reliance on external inputs and replaces it with adaptability, speed, and independence. It doesn't just grow, it grows regardless of conditions, and that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a plant you cultivate. It's a plant that works for you, turning overlooked ground into a reliable, self-sustaining source of food that keeps producing without needing to be controlled. Number 2. Parsnips, the forgotten root that stores its own energy. Parsnips are one of those crops that completely challenge the idea of speed-based farming. In a world where most vegetables are grown quickly, harvested early, and replaced just as fast, parsnips take a different path. They grow slowly, develop underground, and build value over time. And that difference is exactly why they've been pushed aside by modern food systems. But for a grower, it's where the real advantage begins. What makes parsnips especially powerful is how they store energy. Unlike leafy greens that need to be harvested immediately, parsnips develop deep roots that hold nutrients and sugars underground. This allows them to stay in the soil for extended periods, effectively turning your garden into a natural storage system. Instead of harvesting everything at once and worrying about preservation, you harvest when you need it. The plant does the storing for you. Another key advantage is how they respond to cold. Most crops decline when temperatures drop, but parsnips improve. Exposure to frost triggers a natural process where starches convert into sugars, making the root sweeter and more flavorful. This means time and environment actually increase their value rather than reducing it. It's a completely different relationship compared to fast turnover crops. Parsnips also develop strong root systems that reach deep into the soil. This allows them to access nutrients and moisture that shallow-rooted plants cannot. As a result, they are more resilient during dry periods and less dependent on constant watering. They don't just grow. They adapt to the environment in a way that reduces effort and increases stability. From a growing perspective, they require patience, but not complexity. Once planted in loose soil, they need minimal intervention. They don't demand constant feeding or protection. They simply grow, slowly building mass beneath the surface. This makes them ideal for growers who want reliability without constant management. The reason parsnips are rarely seen in modern supply chains is simple. They don't fit the system. They are slow, irregular in shape, and not designed for uniform production. But those limitations are actually strengths in a self-sufficient growing system. They don't depend on perfect conditions, and they don't need immediate harvesting. Compared to fast-growing vegetables, parsnips offer something deeper literally and strategically. They shift the focus from speed to stability, from constant harvesting to controlled, long-term availability, and that's what makes them powerful. They're not just a crop you grow. They're a crop that holds value in the ground, giving you control over when and how you harvest, turning your soil into a living storage system that works without external support. Number 3. Malabar spinach. The heat-proof green that refuses to stop. Malabar spinach is one of those plants that completely exposes a major weakness in traditional gardening, the dependence on mild conditions. Most leafy greens are fragile. They grow well in cool weather, but the moment heat arrives, they bolt, become bitter, and stop producing. Malabar spinach does the opposite. It thrives in heat. In fact, the hotter it gets, the better it performs. And that single difference changes everything. What makes Malabar spinach especially powerful is its ability to grow vertically. Instead of spreading across the ground like most greens, it climbs. It uses space in a completely different way, turning vertical structures like trellises, fences, or poles into productive growing areas. This means you're not limited by ground space. You're expanding upward, increasing output without increasing land use. Its growth speed is another major advantage. Once established, Malabar spinach grows aggressively, producing thick, glossy leaves continuously throughout the season. Unlike traditional spinach that gives you a short harvest window, this plant keeps producing as long as conditions remain warm. That creates a long-term, reliable source of greens without needing constant replanting. The leaves themselves are slightly different from typical spinach. They have a thicker, more succulent texture, which allows them to retain moisture better and resist heat stress. This makes them more durable both in the garden and during preparation. Instead of delicate greens that wilt quickly, Malabar spinach holds its structure. Another key factor is resilience. It does not demand perfect soil or constant watering. Once it establishes, it adapts to real conditions, continuing to grow even when other plants begin to struggle. This makes it ideal for climates where maintaining traditional greens becomes difficult. The reason it is not widely used in large-scale agriculture is because it doesn't fit standardized systems. Its climbing habit, unique texture, and different growth pattern make it less suitable for uniform production and transport. But for a grower, those differences become strengths. Compared to traditional leafy vegetables, Malabar spinach offers independence from seasonal limitations. It replaces fragile growth cycles with continuous production, especially in environments where other crops fail. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a replacement for spinach. It's a plant that removes the limitations of temperature, space, and fragility, turning heat into an advantage and transforming vertical space into a constant, reliable source of food. Number 4. Fenugreek. The fast-growing crop that delivers twice. Fenugreek is one of the most efficient crops you can grow, not because it produces the most volume, but because it produces in layers. Most plants give you a single output. You plant, you wait, you harvest once, and the cycle ends. Fenugreek breaks that pattern completely. It gives you multiple harvests from a single planting, and it does it faster than most crops on this list. The first advantage shows up almost immediately. Within just a few weeks, fenugreek produces tender green leaves that can be harvested and used fresh. This gives you an early return, something most crops cannot offer. Instead of waiting months to see results, you begin harvesting quickly, which makes it one of the most responsive plants you can grow. But what makes fenugreek truly powerful is what happens next. After harvesting the leaves, the plant doesn't stop. It continues growing, eventually producing seeds that are widely used in cooking, traditional medicine, and even commercial products. This creates a second layer of output from the same plant. One planting, two harvests, leaves first, seeds later. This dual-purpose nature increases efficiency dramatically. Instead of replanting for different crops, you extend the value of one growth cycle. Over time, this reduces effort while increasing total yield, which is exactly what low-maintenance, high-output growing is about. Fenugreek is also highly adaptable. It grows well in a variety of soil types and does not require intensive care. It tolerates moderate conditions and continues producing even when the environment is not ideal. This reliability makes it suitable for both beginners and experienced growers. Its growth cycle is relatively short, which allows for multiple planting rounds within a single season. This further increases overall production, turning a small area into a continuous source of output. Another important factor is demand. Fenugreek is already widely used across many regions, particularly in South Asia and the Middle East. This means you're not introducing something new. You're growing something that is already part of everyday use. Compared to single output crops, fenugreek offers more flexibility, more speed, and more total value per planting. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a fast-growing plant, it's a plant that multiplies its usefulness, turning one cycle into multiple returns and making every square of soil work harder without increasing effort. Number 5. Amaranth, the ancient crop that produces on every level. Amaranth is one of the oldest cultivated plants in human history, and the reason it has survived for so long is simple. It produces more than most crops while requiring less. In a world where modern agriculture has narrowed plants down to single-purpose outputs, amaranth still operates as a multi-layer system. It gives you greens early, grain later, and biomass throughout its entire life cycle. The first advantage shows up in its early growth stage. Within a short period after planting, amaranth produces tender leaves that can be harvested and used as a leafy vegetable. These greens are already widely consumed in many regions, especially in South Asia, which means you are growing something familiar and practical from the start. But while you're harvesting the leaves, the plant doesn't stop developing. It continues growing taller, often reaching impressive heights, and begins forming seed heads. These seeds can be harvested and used as a grain, providing a completely different type of output from the same plant. This dual-purpose system transforms one crop into two distinct harvests. What makes amaranth even more powerful is its resilience. It thrives in heat, tolerates poor soil, and continues growing even when conditions are less than ideal. While other crops slow down or fail under stress, amaranth adapts and keeps producing. This makes it a reliable option for areas where maintaining traditional crops becomes difficult. Its growth pattern also contributes to its efficiency. Amaranth produces a large amount of biomass in a relatively small space. It grows upward as well as outward, which means you're maximizing production without needing large areas of land. Another important factor is its independence from modern systems. Amaranth does not require heavy inputs or strict conditions to perform well. It grows on its own terms, which reduces effort while maintaining output. Compared to single-use crops, amaranth offers layered productivity. It gives you multiple harvests, adapts to tough conditions, and continues producing over time. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a plant you grow. It's a system that multiplies its value at every stage, turning one planting into continuous, multi-level output without increasing effort. Number 6. Burdock, gobo, the deep-root crop that mines its own nutrients. Burdock is one of the most misunderstood crops you can grow, mainly because most of its value is hidden underground. While modern gardening focuses heavily on visible growth leaves, flowers, and quick results, burdock operates differently. It grows downward. And in doing so, it unlocks a completely different level of efficiency that most crops never reach. What makes burdock especially powerful is its deep taproot system. Instead of relying on surface nutrients like most vegetables, it pushes far into the soil, accessing minerals and moisture that other plants simply cannot reach. This turns burdock into a natural nutrient miner. It pulls value from deep layers of the soil and concentrates it into its root, which becomes the primary harvest. This deep root structure also gives it resilience. Because it can access moisture from below the surface, it is less affected by dry conditions compared to shallow-rooted crops. While other plants struggle during drought periods, burdock continues growing steadily. This reduces dependency on constant watering and makes it more reliable in challenging environments. The root itself is highly valued, especially in traditional cuisines such as Japanese cooking, where it is known as gobo. It has a firm texture and a unique flavor, making it both functional and marketable. Unlike delicate vegetables that spoil quickly, burdock roots can be stored for longer periods, adding another layer of practicality. From a growing perspective, burdock does not require constant attention. Once planted, it develops slowly but steadily. It does not demand heavy fertilization because it is already sourcing nutrients from deep within the soil. This reduces input costs and simplifies maintenance. Another overlooked advantage is its impact on soil structure. As the deep roots grow and later decompose, they improve soil aeration and create pathways for water and nutrients. This benefits not just burdock itself, but the plants that come after it. In this way, burdock becomes part of a long-term soil building system. Compared to shallow, fast-growing crops, burdock offers depth, both literally and strategically. It focuses on long-term value rather than quick returns, building strength below the surface before delivering its harvest. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a plant you grow. It's a plant that transforms the soil, pulls hidden resources to the surface, and turns deep, overlooked layers of the earth into something productive and usable. Number 7. Cowpeas. The heat-tolerant crop that produces when others fail. Cowpeas are one of the most practical crops you can grow, especially if you're dealing with heat, dry conditions, or inconsistent soil quality. While many plants struggle under stress, cowpeas do the opposite. They perform when conditions get difficult. And that single trait is what makes them so valuable in a system that depends on reliability. What makes cowpeas especially powerful is their tolerance to extreme environments. They thrive in hot climates and can handle drought conditions far better than most vegetables. Instead of requiring constant watering and perfect soil, they adapt and continue producing even when resources are limited. This turns them into a dependable crop where others would fail. Another major advantage is their ability to improve the soil while they grow. Cowpeas belong to the legume family, which means they fix nitrogen in the soil. In simple terms, they take nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form that plants can use. This doesn't just benefit the cowpeas, it improves the soil for future crops as well. Over time, this reduces the need for fertilizers and creates a more sustainable growing system. Their growth pattern adds another layer of efficiency. Cowpeas can grow as low, spreading plants, or as climbing vines, depending on the variety. This flexibility allows you to use both ground space and vertical space, increasing productivity without needing more land. The harvest itself is equally valuable. Cowpeas produce edible beans that are widely used in cooking across many regions. This existing demand makes them practical, not experimental. You're growing something that people already use regularly. Another key benefit is their relatively fast growth cycle. Compared to long-term crops, cowpeas produce within a reasonable time frame, allowing for multiple planting cycles in suitable climates. This increases overall output and keeps production consistent. Compared to fragile crops that depend on controlled conditions, cowpeas offer stability. They grow under pressure, improve the soil, and produce consistently without requiring high input, and that's what makes them powerful. They're not just a crop you grow when conditions are perfect. They're the crop that keeps producing when conditions are not, turning difficult environments into productive ones without increasing effort. Number 8. Quinoa. The high-value grain that adapts beyond limits. Quinoa is one of the few crops that is successfully moved from traditional use into global demand. And the reason is simple. It combines nutrition, adaptability, and value in a way most grains cannot. While modern agriculture depends heavily on a small number of staple crops, quinoa stands out as an alternative that performs well under conditions where others struggle. What makes quinoa especially powerful is its adaptability. It can grow in a wide range of environments, from cooler climates to areas with less than ideal soil. While it does have preferred conditions, it is far more flexible than many traditional grains. This ability to adjust gives it an advantage in unpredictable growing situations, where reliability becomes more important than perfection. Another key factor is its nutritional profile. Quinoa is often considered a complete protein, which means it contains all essential amino acids. This alone places it in a higher category compared to many staple grains. As awareness of nutrition increases globally, demand for crops like quinoa continues to grow, especially in health-focused markets. From a growing perspective, quinoa follows a relatively straightforward cycle. It produces tall, seed-bearing plants that can generate a significant yield from a single planting. While it requires attention during early stages, once established, it becomes more resilient and capable of continuing through varying conditions. Its market positioning is another advantage. Unlike common grains that compete heavily on price and volume, quinoa operates in a higher value category. It is often sold as a premium product, which means growers are not just competing on quantity, they are part of a value-driven market. Quinoa also contributes to crop diversity. Relying on a small number of crops increases risk, but introducing plants like quinoa spreads that risk and creates more stable systems over time. It becomes part of a broader strategy rather than a single solution. Compared to traditional grains, quinoa offers flexibility, higher nutritional value, and stronger market positioning. It is not just another crop. It is a shift toward diversified and resilient growing. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just something you grow, it's something that adapts, holds value, and connects you to a growing global demand without requiring the rigid conditions that most grains depend on. Number 9. Groundnut Apios americana, the underground protein crop nobody uses. Groundnut is one of the most overlooked crops you can grow, and that's mainly because its value is hidden beneath the surface. While most plants are judged by what you can see above ground, this one builds its real strength underground. And that hidden growth is exactly what makes it different from almost everything else on this list. What makes groundnut especially powerful is its dual growth system. Above ground, it grows as a climbing vine, using vertical space just like beans or peas. But below the surface, it produces chains of edible tubers. This means you're using both vertical and underground space at the same time, effectively doubling your production potential from a single plant. The tubers themselves are rich in protein, which is extremely rare for root crops. Most underground vegetables are high in carbohydrates, but groundnut shifts the balance by offering a more nutrient-dense profile. This makes it not just another root crop, but a unique food source with added value. Its growth pattern is slow at first, but once established, it becomes highly reliable. It spreads gradually and continues producing year after year without needing to be replanted. This turns it into a long-term system rather than a seasonal crop. You're not starting over, you're building on what already exists. Another key advantage is its adaptability. Groundnut grows well in a variety of conditions and doesn't require intensive care. It benefits from support structures for climbing, but beyond that, it manages itself with minimal intervention. Over time, it becomes a stable part of your growing system. The reason it remains underground in both senses is because it doesn't fit modern agriculture. Its irregular growth, underground harvest, and slower development make it less suitable for large-scale, uniform production. But for a grower focused on efficiency and independence, those traits become strengths. Compared to traditional crops, groundnut offers layered productivity. It produces above and below ground, provides a unique nutritional profile, and continues growing over time without constant replanting. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a plant, you grow. It's a hidden system that uses every layer of space, turning soil and vertical growth into a continuous long-term source of food that most people never even consider. Number 10. Kohlrabi, the fast, spacey-efficient crop that breaks expectations. Kohlrabi is one of the most unusual-looking vegetables you can grow, and that's exactly why it gets overlooked. It doesn't fit the typical image of a crop. It's not a leaf, not a root, and not quite a stem in the traditional sense. But behind that strange appearance is one of the most efficient and fast-producing plants available. What makes kohlrabi especially powerful is how quickly it develops. Unlike many crops that take months to reach maturity, kohlrabi grows fast. Within a short period, it forms a swollen stem above the ground, which becomes the main harvest. This speed allows you to produce food quickly and consistently, making it ideal for continuous planting cycles. Its compact growth habit is another major advantage. Kohlrabi does not require large amounts of space, which means you can grow more plants in a smaller area. This makes it highly efficient for small gardens or limited land. Instead of spreading wide or deep, it focuses its growth into a tight, productive form. Another key benefit is its dual usability. The bulb is the primary harvest, offering a crisp texture and mild flavor that works in a variety of dishes. But the leaves are also edible, similar to other leafy greens. This means you're not wasting any part of the plant. You're getting multiple uses from a single crop. Kohlrabi also adapts well to different conditions. It grows best in cooler weather, but can handle a range of environments with proper timing. It does not demand extreme care, making it accessible even for beginners. Once planted, it follows a straightforward growth cycle that is easy to manage. The reason it remains less common in large-scale systems is partly due to its appearance and handling. It doesn't fit standardized expectations, and its unique shape makes it less convenient for mass production and transport. But for a grower, those limitations disappear. Compared to traditional vegetables, kohlrabi offers speed, efficiency, and versatility. It produces quickly, uses space effectively, and delivers multiple outputs without requiring complex care. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just a strange-looking plant. It's a highly efficient crop that turns small space into fast, reliable production, proving that the most unusual plants are often the most practical. If you look at these crops differently, the pattern becomes obvious. The most powerful plants aren't the ones pushed by the system. They're the ones that work outside of it. They grow in tough conditions, produce consistently, and don't depend on perfect environments to succeed. That's what makes them valuable. They give you control, not dependency. Instead of relying on fragile systems, you're building something that works on its own. Drop a comment below and tell me which one changed your perspective the most. And if you want more strategies on growing smarter, more resilient crops like these, make sure you subscribe, because this is just the beginning.